Well, quickly, a little bit about me. I started my working life as an architect, but in 1982 got a job from a classified ad in the newspaper to work as a draftsman on a pirate film called Savage Islands. And I decided to run away and join the circus and never return to architecture. And the film industry in New Zealand was very small in the 80s. So my next job was as an art director. And my third job, I was a production designer. So I kind of got into the industry pretty quickly. Since then, I've worked all around the world on all sorts of different jobs, really specializing in set building in very difficult locations with logistic challenges on desert islands, top of snowy mountains, that sort of thing. Like most people in the art department in those days, I didn't really have anything to do with visual effects, but that all changed when I was embedded with Weta Digital designing the adventures of Tintin. And in typical visual effects fashion, I was contracted for 6 weeks, and the job ended up, I built a department of 28 people and we worked for 2 years on the design of Tintin, which was, that was kind of my introduction to visual effects. Since then, I've been involved with Avatar since 2006. So my nodding relationship with visual effects has really become more a way of life. The Avatar films are unusual in that they appear to be all animated. I mean, most people think they're all digital, but about 18% of the content is actually really traditional live action. It's actors in physical sets. But there's 4 modes. As well as that, we've obviously got the performance captured digital characters in virtual environments. And then we've got physical actors in virtual sets and digital characters in physical sets. So the whole movie is kind of smooshed together and mixed up. So you can't really tell what you're looking at, what's virtual and what's real. So what I'd like to show you now is some of the things in the films that people think are digital, but are in fact very, very real. So can we have next slide, please? Ah, very good. I've called this Making the Unreal Real because my involvement is really with the physical side of things, and because Jim Cameron likes to keep everything very real. He's our reality check, if you like. Next slide. Oh, thank you very much. Keep going. Next slide. Right, here's a few facts that really speak for themselves. The point here is that they're very large movies with very large art departments and large construction departments. As an example, on Way of Water, we had at times up to 14 electricians handling the on-screen interactive lighting, which is all LED based, and then all the lights in the set and on the instrument panels and so on, they all go back to the main board and are controlled by the lighting department, the gaffer and so on. You'll notice there under the vehicles, we've got 43 subcontractors because we have a philosophy of not doing anything in-house that somebody else can do better. So rather than setting up a lot of departments doing things like fiberglassing and so on, we just bid those out and get them done. This works really well because we can get components made in parallel timing, and then they all come together rather than having to do everything serially by ourselves. It's kind of based on the aircraft industry and the way they build airplanes. Next slide, please. This is the timeline of movie 2. The takeaway here is really that they take a long time. It was a reasonably drawn out progress. We were affected by COVID. I mean, we started shooting Avatar 2 in 2000 and when was it, 20, I think, and then we didn't finish to 2024. We just actually finished shooting the live action at Christmas. Jim always says no wine will be poured till it's ready. And so the movies proceed at his pace, and everything has to be accepted, done to Jim's standards before it goes into the workflow, really. Construction was spread between Auckland and Wellington. We made the vehicles in Auckland, just tapping into a bigger industrial base and particularly boat builders. While the studio sets were built in Wellington, where there was approximately 248 days live action shooting. Okay, next please. Here's a grab from the movie showing Jake versus the Sea Dragon, which if you go to the next slide, these vehicles were actually physical vehicles. So they're comped into this scene, but they're actually, they're not digital models. That's actually live action. So next slide, please. So these are the vehicles. There's the Matador, which is a 17-meter long command and control military boat. It's a huge set, and was shot on the motion base, as you can see here. Next. Then the Picador is a 10-meter long military patrol boat. Next. This is the Dragon that we brought back from the first movie. After we'd finished shooting Avatar 1, this got chopped up into pieces and thrown in a shipping container, and then was stored in a big warehouse out in the desert north of LA. So when we found out we had to rebuild it, we had to go up to LA and identify all the parts in this big warehouse. It was like the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And then all the parts were shipped back to New Zealand, and we spread them out and put them all in order and rebuilt the whole thing. It's a big set, the Dragon. It weighs 15 tons. Next, please. The Kestrel is the next-gen tilt-rotor aircraft, so it's substantially bigger than the Samson, but along similar lines. Next. The Mako is a miniature sub, which was shot on a mow base. It had two modes, a dry mode and also a wet mode. You can see here for scenes where it's flooding or being, having water damage in the sea. Next. And the Mako, not the Mako, the crab suit is a little mecha where the set was just the interior, which also had two modes. It had a wet mode and a dry mode. You can see in the illustration here, it's on the mow base in the dry formation. Next. The Rex Samson was built from scratch. It's not a redress of the original Samson. We just started again. It's a lovely set, but it was in the movie, but if you blink, you'd miss it. It was in for about 2 seconds, but it was a nice job. Next. And the Sea Wasp is a tiny little single-seater fighter, and the set was just the cockpit, which we shot on a little mow base. Okie dokie, next please. So the Picador was our first challenge. We received all the concept art from the art department in LA, where there's about 40 people working under Ben Proctor, the production designer. So we receive all the concept art from them and any information they've got, and then we take over. And next slide. So then I was lucky enough to have, this is Alistair Baxter, who was the art director on the Picador, and he in real life is a boat builder or boat designer. He's got a job down in Christchurch designing jet boats, so he was very invaluable. Next, please. So we're having done the worked out how to build the thing and done all the actual technical drawings. We then did our own concept not concept drawings really. We had the concept, did our own illustrations of the detailed design, and they then got sent back to LA and for final approval. Okay, next. This is the cockpit. Next. And keeping going. So what we were doing here was incorporating real instrumentation into the cockpit design. So as well as a lot of film stuff, there was all the actual stuff we needed to make a real boat. Next. And again, next please. So this is the hull, which was made in aluminium and was constructed by a boat builder in West Auckland. So the boat is a real working boat. It's got a Maritime New Zealand certificate of survey. So we went through quite a big process of inspection and approval. Okay, next. This is the hull being built. Next. And yes, this is the hull. Okay, next. Meanwhile, another boat builder on the North Shore was making all the fiberglass components. That was their speciality. Next. Yep, okay, keep going. And this is the finished hull being delivered. Next. And then that was taken over by the builder who was doing all the fiberglass components, and the thing began to be assembled. Okay, next. This is all the parts coming together. Next. Yeah. Okay. So bottom left is one of the engines. Okay, you can go to the next slide. These were built for us by a company in New Orleans in the States that specialize in marinizing engines. They were Chevy engines, 6.2 litre supercharged V8s. So what you're looking at there was the part of the set that could produce over 1,000 horsepower. So we're dealing with some serious numbers here. Okay, next. The production were very obsessed, we would call it, with security and privacy. So we made these special covers to cover the boat so nobody could see what was going on when it was out in public. Next. And here it is when we launched it the first time, just testing the balance with the cover on, security. Okay, next. And for the first sea trials, we launched the boat on a farm through a mangrove swamp in the shallow arm of a very remote harbour up north. We successfully avoided any curious eyes, that's for sure. Next. Yeah, here we are, getting it in the water through the mud. Okay, next. So here we are, testing it for the first time, which was great fun. Next. We started gathering data immediately. So as well as being on board the boat, we had a chase boat we were filming from and taking stills, and we had a drone up in the air filming from the air as well. So we ran it until we eventually blew one of the gearboxes up, which was a successful test. We wanted to know what would break. Next. This is the screen grab from the GPS showing our day's work. Okay, next. Then we brought the boat back into our own workshop in Auckland, where we, well, the first thing we did was paint it. Next is, okay, next. Meanwhile, we were carrying on working with the dressing and the instrumentation and doing all the detail work on it, the fine work. Next. Just more painting and signage. Next. And in our next sea trials, we went out off the east coast looking for waves, which unfortunately, it was quite a flat day, but we gave the boat a good workout. Next. Here it is stopping. Stop speed was about 70 kilometers an hour, but by putting it in full reverse and dropping the buckets on the jet units, we could stop in one boat length, which was tremendously exciting to be on the boat. The whole bow would go under the water, and then you'd be hit about waist deep with a huge wave, and the boat would bob back up, and then you'd get whacked from the back from the stern wave would hit you. So yeah, we got pretty damn wet. Okay, next. That's me in the red hat looking terrified. The driver we used actually holds a world hydroplane record for in some race for going 288 kilometers an hour. So we felt pretty safe with him driving this thing around. Next. This is the black box. So whenever the Picador was in the water, we were capturing 21 data streams at 48 hertz. So there was a lot of information. Then this all went to Weather Effects to inform the animation of the digital asset. And most importantly, it went to special effects and drove the motion base. So when we were filming it in the studio on the motion base, any of the movement of the boat was actual movement that we had captured on the water with the real Picador. Which was, yeah, like a really, really good process. It was very successful. Yes, next, please. Weapons, of course, being a movie, the Picador's bristling with guns. So we've got the Hydras and the Chunker and the sound cannon. They were all mounted on, we had a system where they were on pintles that we could adjust for height and position. Yep, okay, next. Getting the kind of the pintle system that could slew and move in 3 dimensions and not rattle and was strong enough was quite an engineering challenge, but we got there in the end. Next, please. So this is the prototype gun, which we then took out and tested in the water. Okay, next, please. Yep, all coming together. Next, please. Then the Picador went down to Wellington, and our scenic department took over it and started doing the aging and the final dressing. Next, please. Which brings it all to life. Next. Then we took it out down in Wellington for more sea trials from a place called Mana, just north of Wellington. And we did get waves, as you'll see next. And next. And so this was quite important. Jim demanded that it could get airborne, so we proved that. So that was successful. At one point, when we were out here this particular day, our fisheries protection boat took an interest in us, and we had to outrun them. Went and hid around on the other side of an island. Kapiti, you can see in the background. Okay, next, please. Then the boat came back to Auckland where we were filming, and of course, for one scene, we had to completely paint the whole thing a different color. Had to put it into this orange and grey livery, which was, yeah, annoying. Next. And we filmed it on a tank that we'd built inside one of the stages at Cumia Film Studios. Next. So here it is going into the tank. Next. And here it is being filmed in the tank. And then we also shot it, if you go to the next slide, out in the ocean tank, which was pretty exciting. We could get it up to a full plane, and then we'd have to stop before we drove through the wall of the tank. So yeah, that was quite nerve-wracking. Okay, next. Then we repainted it back to the original colours and re-aged it again. It went back down to Wellington where it went on the motion base. Okay, next. And next. So this was where all the motion came from. Our actual was captured out on the ocean. One of the times we took it out. Testing. Okay. Next, please. This is another vehicle, which is the Kestrel, which is the next generation tilt rotor. So next, please. We, as usual, received all the concept art and the model from LA. And then we had to figure out how to build it, do the detailed design, the documentation, and next. This is just analysing how big it was, working out how heavy it was going to be, and all the spatial concepts of it. Next, please. And did illustrations sent back for approval of what it would actually look like, all the fine detail. Next. And detailed it up for construction. Next, please. This had to be filmed static on the stage floor and also on a motion base and also hanging from a crane. And the cockpit we designed to be removed from the body. So it was quite an intricate thing. So the first step was making a trussed steel jig. Next, which went to a boat builder where they stitched up all the aluminium. We actually had a company, CNC, cut all the aluminium from our files, and then they went to a boat builder that just really assembled the whole thing. Next. So you can see here that the structure is all being built in aluminium on the steel frame. Next. Now, this is milling out a big block of polystyrene. So the fiberglass components were either fabricated using bucks made in polystyrene or MDF. Next. So that's the mold produced from the polystyrene. Next. Well, this is routing out MDF also to make a mold. Go to the next slide. That's the mold. Anyway, if you go to the next slide. So this produces fiberglass components, but we weren't very happy with this because of the wastefulness of throwing away the polystyrene, and which we hate using anyway, and also wasting the MDF. And you get components that are quite accurate, but they're you can't really do sharp edges. Everything's a bit blobby looking. So go to the next one. So what we developed was a way of making large, complex parts using 3D printing, but this using a lot of these Chinese $400 3D printers that we just had a printer farm, and that we ran these very cheap printers this day and night. Next. Just producing lots of components that were quite small. Next. That we then assembled using an egg crate, a jig, kind of just egg crated together from cheap plywood or MDF. Because we realized, as well as having the file for the part, we had the, if you like, the inverse file, the file that we could use to produce the jig. So all the little parts were just glued together in the jig. Next. And then we sprayed them on the inside with a chop spray fiberglass with a chopper gun. Next. And then they were a boat builder. We used a company that normally produces luxury, like super yachts. They then sprayed the parts on the good face using a high build sandable epoxy. Okay, next. That way we could produce these large parts that were strong and UV stable, and were incredibly accurate, and they had really sharp, like razor sharp undercuts. So that served us well. Okie dokie, next please. So all our components rolled in from all around New Zealand, really. We had people making parts, which came back to our workshop. That's Neil Kirkland there, who's my construction manager, who I've been working with since 1982. Well, we're even before that, because we were actually architects before that. So next, please. So back in the workshop, everything rolled in. Next. And next. parts from metal workers and fiberglass, and all sorts of different companies. Next. And next. All coming together. Next. And next. So there you can see how the aluminium structure is now being hidden, and all you can see is the actual fiberglass components, finished parts. Next. Quite a complex set. I mean, gosh, the drawings were very complicated. Next. That's the instrument panel going together. Next. And next. Next, please. And not also a lot of traditional just set building, like kit bashing, lots of parts we got from aircraft demo yards and so on, just all coming together and going together, not wasting anything. Next, please. And next. And next. This was a production meeting we had, well, in the aircraft, so you can get an idea of the scale of it. It was pretty large. I think it could carry 14 people plus the crew. Next, please. Okay, next. All bits all coming together, all from different companies. This is a huge gun mount, all machined out of a large block of aluminium. Next, please. And the electronics guys are wiring everything up. Okay, next. This is one of the control boards for all the LED lighting. Next. And you can see here they're beginning to get how the paint and the all coming together. Next, please. Yep, next. And next. Yeah, with the graphics and the paint, all the little buttons and things, all looking quite good. Next, please. So this was the team that built the Kestrel. 14 people, mixture of all sorts of skills. Next, please. Then transported down to Wellington. Next, please. Where we installed the weapons and did the final dressing and aging. Next, please. And that's the finished set. Yep. That's the instrument panel all lit up. You can see there, like just glancing at that, how much work goes into it.